Right, so Method got the world first mythic Gahoon kill in Uldir, and Limit came a very respectable and not too distant second. Right, that's the news over. Let's get on to the discussion. So, what I want to talk about first of all, a few little things here, is the popularity of World First Race. Now, whenever I've talked about the World First Race, once it's been concluded, it always seem to get a few people going, oh, it doesn't really matter, no one cares, it's for this tiny number of players. And this was happening even now, and yet Method did something really remarkable. Very surprising from my point of view. I mean, I suppose only Method would do this because Method are not just an awesome raiding guild, they're a corporate entity as well. And of course, very much driven by marketability. So what they were doing was streaming their progress. Now, this is far removed from the normal behaviour of a world first chasing raiding guild, because normally they steep everything in the utmost secrecy. They don't stream their raids. They don't have public logs. They don't even publish the world first kill video until another 4 guilds have done it in the interest of maintaining that close race. All that went out of the window, and it was absolutely marvellous in many ways. Part of my brain was going, I'm not sure I like this, but at the same time, it was brilliant from every angle. It was brilliant for the community. It lets people really see what goes on in the world, because so many misconceptions can arise. And although, you know, these guys are sort of get interviewed, Bay will no doubt be interviewing them this weekend. So many misconceptions about top-end raiding that it just laid all of it bare. This is them actually raiding. This is actually how they are. This is how they're doing it. But I was still getting people saying hardly anyone is interested, it's not relevant at all. And someone even said in the comments, you know, oh, well, let's say there was 100,000 people interested, and I bet it isn't even that. SCO got 170,000 people watching him at its peak when they were killing it. 170,000 people. That was watching him. There were other Method raiders as well. They didn't even collectively get as much as him. But nonetheless, that still adds on several tens of thousands of people who were watching them. And that was the people watching them live. I am interested in the World First Race, but I didn't watch it, okay? Because I was doing other things, not because they're boring, but because I was doing other things. And think about it this way. Why would 170,000 people tune in to see SCO live? It is not because they wanted to see a hairy-ass Scotsman smiling. No, it's because they're interested in the world first race. Of course they are. And that, I want to put it this way. Just thinking about a few figures. Blizzard, a little while ago, were talking about, you know, feedback on forums and things like that. And they were basically saying, and I totally agree with them, that in actual fact, there's probably only about 20% of WoW players look up anything online to do with WoW. Whether it be on forums, whether it be on YouTube or anywhere, there's only about 20% of WoW players do anything WoW related outside of directly playing the game. Okay? Perfectly understandable. So let's think about that. If we assume that there's regularly about 5 million subscribers, that's an assumption, but it can't be that far off. So you're talking about... And remember that the roughly 250,000 people that were watching something on Twitch related to this world first thing at its peak, those were the people watching something, okay? Because they could at that time. What about the people, other parts of the world where it's sleepy bye-byes time, they couldn't actually tune in at that time. They may still have been watching it at other times as well. But that 250,000 there. So let's say that there were 3 times as many again, which is not unreasonable, were interested in the World First Race, but not watching it at that moment, because that's more than reasonable. You're not going to tell me there was more than a quarter of interested people actually watching them on Twitch at that moment in time, because one, they even if they were free to do so, they may not have actually wanted to do that part of it, and or many of them may not have been able to, even if they did want to. That would put it at about 1 million interested people. That is not a stretch. In fact, I think that's conservative. That would straight away put you at in Blizzard's estimation, 20% of the WoW players that look anything up online. So I could extrapolate from that more than reasonably and say that actually everyone is interested in the world first race. And this is what I've tried to say. And Blizzard, thank you, Blizzard behave, Method, even better than Blizzard, Method, have actually given us basically the proof. There's massive interest in the world first race. Not everyone does mythic raiding. Not everyone who does do mythic raiding will get to the end of it and follow in their footsteps and kill mythic Gahoon, or at least not while it's current. There are some people who don't raid at all, but it doesn't mean they are not interested. There are plenty of people who love football but never play it. That's not how it works. You can be interested in something without actually engaging in it directly yourself. It is the pinnacle of World of Warcraft. Mythic raiding is the pinnacle. Of course there are lots of people interested in it, and I hope that this completely puts paid to it now. But it is also worth bearing in mind another misconception that I keep fighting against when it comes to these world first things, that thankfully Limit have put paid to as well. I mean, congratulations to Limit. I thought it would have been brilliant if they'd have actually got the world first. They didn't, but do you know what? They came extremely close. I do not know realistically how close. Because at that level, I suppose even a few hours. Because I also don't know exactly what they did when they heard Method had killed it. Because I can imagine when you're going for the world first, and then they were first to Gahoon. Remember the meme? First to the moon, first to Gahoon. They were worth it just for that. This whole race was worth it just for that. I loved that meme. But I'd love to know this from them, actually. There's a couple of things I would love to know. There's quite a lot of things I would love to know. There's a couple of things in particular I'd love to know. One, I know, obviously, being American Guild, they got to do the second reset a bit earlier than the European guilds. And I know there was a quandary. And, of course, the quandary is, do you re-clear, get more gear, therefore making Gahoon progress easier? But, of course, you don't necessarily know how long it's going to take to re-clear. And maybe if you lose the world first race while you're doing it, well, it's like, and obviously they felt that they wouldn't necessarily need the re-clear. They could do it in the gear that they were in. Do you extend? Now, they extended, I gather. But that must be a terrible decision to have to make, because it's so difficult to really know what is the correct answer. Unless, of course, you just believe that it's mathematically impossible to do it in your first week's worth of gear. So you think, well, we've got to get some gear, so obviously we're going to re-clear. But in any other situation, I can imagine it's incredibly difficult to make that decision. But that decision had to be made. But then when you find out you're not going to get the world first and you're so close, it can be quite crushing. I know guilds in that situation often just take a break. It's like, well, let's just take a break for a bit. Of course, they still want to get world second. And there was still a race for that. But, let's just take a break. I don't know whether they did that or not. I don't even know if they were actively raiding at the time when Method killed it. I guess so. But, if they did do that, I mean, it didn't take very much longer for them to kill it, I woke up this morning to a tweet saying that they had got it as well. So that was pretty good. That was awesome, in fact. I'm glad they did it quite soon after, because it does show there's been a bit of race. Now, I have to say, on terms of race, obviously a lot of people congratulated them at this time. And I'm going to have to... Unfortunately, I've been doing plenty of bashing of Ian Hazakostas this week, so I might as well throw one more in. And he tweeted his congratulations. It looks quite positive at first, but I actually didn't like this, because I thought it was a bit disrespectful, not to the current... Well, it actually arguably was disrespectful towards Method, actually, this tweet, saying that it was the hardest fought race... What was it? Let me get the actual tweet. For making this the most hotly contended raid progression race that I can recall in a long, long time. Well, unless he's going to call a long, long time the last expansion, that's not actually true, is it? It's not like Method marched through progress in the last expansion. They didn't even get all the world firsts. So I thought that was a bit disrespectful to Exorcist when they were coming second, and Method, indeed, when they were coming second. So, a bit disappointed with that, because I thought, you're making a congratulatory message in a way that's shitting on other people that have fought very hard in the past ones as well. I'm sure he didn't mean it like that. But where it was really awesome, where it was excellent, was there's another misconception that keeps flying around as well. And this misconception can only fly around from people who've only been playing the game for a few years or who have very short memories. And it's this thing about, oh, well, it's always going to be the EU that gets the world first. NA can't possibly get the world first. And it's mostly from America that these views come out. And it's mostly this weird misconception. It's like, well, of course, Europeans can afford to just play all day. If we decide we want to stop working and just play computer games all day, apparently our governments will pay us to do that. No. But there was this misconception, absolutely mindless. Even Method, certainly a few years ago, many of their players worked. They had to work. When you did the world first race, you took a couple of weeks off work. You had a job where you could take a couple of weeks off work and sort that. And if it went on a little bit longer, you were basically buggered, as far as I could tell. But obviously, they put it on a much more professional footing now. And of course, but this is why I really wanted Limit to push really hard, and they did, because Method are just something else. And I think that's why this misconception came out about the EU getting it. We've had Method, and before then Paragon as well. They were just on another level, really. A military-like planning towards the whole thing. Just the level of organisation. The level of organisation to do mythic raiding is already fairly fearsome. To do it at that level, much more so. To do it on the level of the likes of Method and Paragon before them. Paragon I always thought were particularly impressive because being a Finnish-only guild, they had two major roadblocks. First of all, if they're only recruiting from Finnish-speaking players, that's a very small pool. And I mean a very small. For those who don't really know Europe, Finland does not have a large population. And I don't think there are that many people outside of Finland who speak Finnish. Maybe a few other little Scandinavians around. And then the second roadblock is the fact that they're having to conduct their raids in Finnish. Have you heard Finnish? Anyway, but what I'm saying is you've got these super impressive guilds. So the fact that it was really difficult for anyone to break through, Exorcist managed it, is nothing to do with the relative difference between players based in Europe and based in America. It was just you had these superpowers of raiding that just happened to be in Europe. But there's no reason why that same level cannot be achieved in North America. And Limit have now shown that. Yes, okay, they lost out, but they were so close. And what I will be interested to note is, because Limit presumably are going to do another little thing I would like to know. So they're going to do a debrief, of course. They're going to work out, okay, so how can we get even better? If one of the things that would allow them to become much stronger, it's all very easy to put everything on. It's not all about the players, but the players are super important. This surely will allow them to basically take the cream of the American players now. Because everyone else in America will be looking at Limit and say they've been competitive before. They've had their little wibbly wobblies in Legion, but they've been competitive. But this is now they've now stood toe to toe with Method, and it will be interesting to see for the next races. Maybe not the very next one, because I think that's the smaller raid. I'll be more interested in the one that will come out after in the new year. To see what can happen there if they manage to use that to not only give themselves confidence, but to maybe be able to, if they feel they need to recruit others, they may not, but other people will now also see them as, well, this is a prospect of me as an American-based player actually going for world first. That would be interesting if that can actually make the guild stronger, that self-belief and the belief in other players that they could potentially recruit, that they can step it up. And I'm really looking forward to as I say, maybe not the next one, the little one, but maybe the one after. I'm not quite sure why I'm not saying the next one, but I just feel the smaller raids, maybe not so much. But I am really looking forward to it now. And I think if Ian Hazard has said the most exciting world race for a while, I would say so, because because not only were Method streaming it, which is totally new, but you had this North American and EU guild pretty much toe to toe. That was really interesting as well, that whole dynamic. And I hope we see more of this. And I'd love to see other guilds try and step up. I think it's difficult. I think it is difficult because it might be that there's a limited number of actual players who can cope with the sacrifices needed to be able to play at that level. And it might well be that, you know, basically one guild in each region can basically hoover up all of the best players for the particular language they speak anyway. So maybe Exorcist in terms of Russian speakers, Method in terms of English speakers, and, you know, Limit in terms of, well, English speakers in America, I suppose. But anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share for further content. Until next time, I'll see you later.